Welcome back to the channel, Adventures Through Climate Change, with your host, me, Trevor. Thank you for tuning in. And what we're doing, we're taking an armchair approach, meaning I don't leave this chair, and we check out mainly videos. We'll check out other stuff and articles and whatnot when they come up, and I can find something that's valid with what I'm kind of talking about, the theme of the week or the theme of the few days. Right now, let's take a look at, and just so you guys know, yes, I am getting over being sick, and I apologize for sounding like this. I'm feeling a little bit better right now, but still just a little bit sick. Hey, we're looking at TED, right? TED. Of course, I'm subscribed because I subscribe to everybody that I check out. I suggest you do too. And I liked it because I haven't watched it yet, but I assume that I'm going to like at least the effort they put into the video. So I appreciate that. And let's get into it. I don't know if I'm going to be loud enough here. Oh, this is the actual cost of preventing climate breakdown, okay? Because we know how much the actual cost is.
As the climate crisis worsens, too many people are swinging from denial straight to despair. But we should not lose hope. Humanity has enormous resources under its command, and by applying them wisely, we can still prevent ecological cataclysm. Let's talk numbers. What would it cost to prevent catastrophic climate change? Would we have to commit 50% of our total budget? 30%? 10%? Naturally enough, no one knows for sure. My team and I
Movie's over.
have spent weeks poring over various reports and academic papers, living in a cloud of numbers. But while the models behind the numbers are dizzyingly complex, the bottom line should cheer us up. Most experts converge on the number 2%.
2%.
If humanity increases our annual investment in clean technologies and infrastructure by around 2% of global GDP, that should be enough to prevent catastrophic climate change. If you want to see how experts
Sounds
got
like
to that number,
pretty
you're
reasonable.
welcome to visit the Sapienship website. We can of course argue endlessly about the exact number, tweaking the models this way and that way. But we should look at the big picture. The crucial news is that the price tag of preventing the apocalypse is in the low single digits of annual global GDP. Even the more pessimistic models generally estimate it at below
Okay.
5%. And most models say it requires investing only an additional 2% of global GDP in the right places. And note the word investing. We are not talking about burning piles of banknotes in some huge sacrifice to the spirits of the earth. We are talking about making investments in new technologies and infrastructure, such as advanced batteries or other technologies to store solar energy, and updated power grids to distribute it.
What I just heard, he wants all that money for R&D because he's like, we don't have really a method right now. We need better battery, like bigger, better. I don't understand the whole battery unless they find some other way to actually charge the particles and in a more efficient way and other materials. Like we just don't have enough of materials on the earth, so I don't know if you're going asteroid diving, what we're doing here. But I just the problem is it just seems like everybody's idea is unrealistic, and it could be me. Let's let him continue.
These investments will create lots of new jobs and economic opportunities, and are likely to be economically profitable in the long run, in part by reducing healthcare expenditures and saving millions of people from sickness caused by air pollution. In addition, since oil
Maybe
and
that's what
gas
got me.
often prop up autocratic and militaristic regimes, reducing our dependence on fossil fuels will be a huge boon to democracy and to peace. All this can be translated into a concrete political plan of action. We have learned in recent years to define our goal in terms of one number. 1.5 degrees Celsius. We can define the means to do this with another number, 2%. Increased investment in clean technologies and infrastructure by 2 percentage points of global GDP above 2020 levels. Of course, unlike the 1.5 Celsius figure, which is a scientifically robust threshold, the 2% figure represents only a rough guesstimate. It should be understood as a ballpark figure that can help to frame the kind of political project humanity requires. It tells us that preventing catastrophic climate change is a totally feasible project, even though it would obviously cost a lot of money. Since global GDP in 2020 was about 85 trillion US dollars, we are talking about a number around 1.7 trillion US
Good
dollars.
night.
But that's still just 2%.
Just
This means that to save the environment, we don't need to completely derail the economy or to abandon the achievements of modern civilization. We just need to get our priorities right. Committing 2% of annual global GDP is far from the whole story, of course. It won't solve all our ecological problems, such as oceans brimming with plastic or the continued loss of biodiversity. And even to prevent catastrophic climate change, we'll need to make sure that the funds are invested in the right places and that the new investments don't cause their own negative ecological or social fallout. We will also need to change some of our behaviors and ways of thinking, from what we eat to how we travel. None of that will be easy. But that's exactly why we have politicians. Their job is to deal with the hard stuff. And politicians are actually very skilled at shifting 2% of resources from here to there. It's what they do all the time. The difference between the policies of right-wing and left-wing parties often amounts to a few percentage points of GDP. When faced by a major crisis, politicians swiftly shift far more resources to fight it. For example, in 1945, the US spent about 36% of its GDP on winning the Second World War. During the 2008-2009 financial crisis, the US government spent about 3.5% of GDP to save financial institutions that were deemed too big to fail. Maybe you...
Okay, I'm on board with this guy that we shouldn't be spending stuff like that, and we create wars. And I'm not saying we're doing it this time, but like, okay, our politicians are just, okay, I'm not getting political. However, this guy is, and we have to respond to that, right? So I don't agree with any of those reasons to spend our money, to be quite honest. I think our military funds should be spent for defense and pretty much defense only. Nations that need our help, if they're allied nations, we're going to have to consider certain things. But what's going on now? No. And what happened when they bailed out all the banks rather than bailing out like the people, realistically the people. Terrible. So I can also disagree with your take on where this is going.
Humankind should also treat the Amazon rainforest as too big to fail. Let's try a thought experiment. Given the current price of cleared rainforest land in South America and the size of the Amazon rainforest, buying all of it in order to protect local forests, biodiversity, and human communities from destructive business interests would cost about $800 billion, or a one-off payment of less than 1% of global GDP. In just the first 9 months of 2020, governments around the world announced stimulus measures worth nearly 14% of global GDP to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. If citizens press them hard enough, politicians can do the same to deal with the ecological crisis. So can investment banks and pension funds. Pension funds hold over 56 trillion US dollars. What's the point of having a pension if you don't have a future? At present, most businesses and governments are unwilling to make the additional 2% investment necessary to prevent catastrophic climate change. Where does the money go instead? Well, every 2 years.
Did he define catastrophic climate crisis? Or did he? I know he said 1.5% or 1.5 degrees Celsius, and then 2%, but that's okay.
Years, approximately 2.4% of global GDP is spent on food that goes to waste.
I mean, I can agree with that.
Also spend about 500 billion US dollar annually on, wait for it, direct subsidies for fossil fuels. That means that every 3.5 years, governments write a nice fat check for an amount equivalent to 2% of annual global GDP and gift it to the fossil fuel industry. And it gets worse.
Okay, what are those subsidies for? Okay, homework.
When you factor in the social and environmental costs that the fossil fuel industry causes but isn't asked to pay for, the value of these subsidies actually reaches a staggering 7% of annual global GDP.
It's a lot, though.
Now consider tax evasion. It's estimated that money hidden by the wealthy in tax havens is worth around 10% of global GDP. Every year, another $1.4 trillion in profits is stashed offshore by corporations, which is equal to 1.6% of global GDP. To prevent the apocalypse, we'll probably need to impose some new taxes. But why not start with collecting the old ones? Such examples can be multiplied, but you get the picture. The money is there. Of course, collecting taxes, stopping food wastage, and slashing subsidies is easier said than done, especially when faced by some of the most powerful lobbies in the world. But it doesn't require a miracle. It just requires determined organization. So we shouldn't succumb to defeatism. Whenever someone says, it's too late, the apocalypse is here, reply, nah, we can stop it with just 2%. And when COP27 convenes in Egypt in November 2022, we should tell the attending leaders that it's not enough to make vague future pledges about 1.5 degrees Celsius. We want them to take out their pens and sign a check for 2% of annual global GDP. Thank you.
Okay. Obviously not my type of video. You guys know me pretty well if you've been watching for a while. Look, you know what? I just think this is a lot of like speculation and guessing, and there's really no answers into what he says because, you know, he's like you could spend 800 billion to help the rainforest down in South America. Okay, what are we talking about? Like we're gonna just pay them to not deforest, pay the people. Like I don't understand what he's talking about as far as some of that stuff goes. And all we need is 1.7 trillion to. I mean, what? Like R&D to figure out what the heck is going on, like what we can do other energy wise. And look, if that's the best we got, that's the best we got as far as the energy goes, right? We need petroleum right now. So look into the subsidies. I think there was just a lot missing from this. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I mean, look, I think we should get rid of most of those programs, most of that spending. I think we should get rid of all that. I think all taxes should be just taken away, right? I think we should just have a consumption tax. It's basically like a, and if you want to add like a single flat tax, it's a very minimal, but flat tax, a standard 5%, and then everything else is just a consumption tax, because we disproportionately spend based on how much money we have, right? So that person would automatically be spending that amount more every time they spend anyways. It's a consumption tax, but get rid of all that other crap. That is my thing too. So with that being said, let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you don't mind, and if you think I earned it, I'd love your subscription and maybe a like or dislike, whatever you guys think. I hope to catch you in the next video.